ask anybody's question but yours. You're an idiot. And really a disloyal person.
Hello and welcome to the Disloyal Idiots podcast here on the Fans First Sports Network, a Syracuse Orange podcast. Christian Guzman here, along with the fellow cohorts of Steve Haller and Andy Progler, now all back in our respective locations after all congregating in the friendly confines of the JMA Wireless Dome this past Friday. Which quickly turned sour in the last dying seconds of the game, a feeling that each of our Premier League teams have so desperately recently felt in very, very recent times.
Too soon on all accounts, please.
Yeah.
I mean, do you want to go with the parallel that, like, I came into this weekend being very happy if Syracuse was 2-1 with a 3-1 likely, and the same way that I was happy if Arsenal came out of the Etihad with a point and only two back of City in the title race? We gonna go there?
Yeah, and I'd be really happy with a draw against Palace.
But they look good. They look better.
I said you're against Palace 2 weeks ago.
This is very true. I mean, honestly, like when you take a deep look at the PFF grades from our Syracuse-Stanford game that happened on Friday, last second field goal loss on a very interesting just day in general, Stanford winning 26-24 in the JMA Wireless Dome on Friday night on ESPN. Like, there are standouts, but like overall, this was a Syracuse team that played decently well, and it'd be interesting to see how the Bill C win machine would have spat this out for Syracuse. I believe it's 1,000 times? Like theoretically, if you play that game 1,000 times, what's the percentage that Syracuse will win that? Because it felt like that's a game that Syracuse probably should have won, based on how, even though it was close and there was many things that were wrong with Syracuse, we should be talking about a win here. And there were many aspects, both on the field and in the coaching room, where I think we can take a look at. This is really your first learning curve now for not only the Syracuse coaching staff that is relatively new in some high profile positions for some of these coaches, but also for the players and for some of them who are now, experiencing increased and changing roles, what to do now as the season goes on, especially in clutch time situations.
I mean, to your point, Christian, sorry, I just pulled up the Bill C is eternally forever the best. His spreadsheet is already updated for week 4. Because or week 5, he's a beast among beasts. Stanford Syracuse game margin was Stanford by 2. Stanford's post-game win expectancy margin 33.6%. Actual expected margin Syracuse by 3.
There you go.
Yeah, so just caveating that to everything that we say here.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been through this. We tend to be the rational folks around these parts being the Syracuse fan base. There's been some doom and gloom floating around, and I think we just need to remind people that this is a coaching staff with a defensive coordinator who has called a total now of 3 games in his career. This is a team that had a record number, or maybe top 5 number of new additions and or transfers to their roster. We have a head coach who has coached a total of 3 games. This is a team that is still finding itself. This is a team that has a lot of potential. This is a team that still, even in the loss, showed a lot of things that weren't horrible. Fran actually said it himself that they got outcoached. And while there were individual performances that left a little to be desired, including any ability to pick up a blitz, ultimately it came down to a couple of plays where, something was called wrong, or a DB, doesn't expect a back shoulder throw instead of a leading throw on a route that everybody knew was coming. There's some things that can get shored up and corrected, and this is not the end in any way, shape, or form of this Syracuse team. I think we've got a lot of things to talk about today, and not all of them are going to be negative, I don't think.
I think. Have you seen the? I'm not sure, Steve, if you've seen the PFF grades yet for Syracuse. You did. That's
I have
pretty.
not. I have not.
Yeah. So
I've actually, to be fair, this season I've actually made it a point to not look at them,
Okay.
just so we can have this fun game on the podcast.
great because I'm not sure if this was Gattuso or whoever the Italian manager who made the sometimes pretty good and the sometimes pretty shit meme.
Yep.
Because that's essentially what this PFF pass blocking grade looks like. Because there are some pretty good and there are some pretty shit.
Yeah. I would. Well, I wouldn't put any of the outside players as pretty good.
One outside player, one who showed up for 12 snaps.
Yeah, okay. None of the players that played a significant amount of snaps on the either end of the line. And to be fair, part of that is how and why they attack them. But
Yeah, it's kind of it also doesn't help when every tight end has a pass blocking grade, albeit in limited appearances, but a pass blocking grade of under 40.
what are our running backs showing up as? Because I thought Sean Tucker was back.
Actually decent.
Yeah.
Um
Might have just been a couple of plays where I keyed on them, but yeah, there
Like
were some
yeah.
plays that were Ole.
Well, LaQuint Allen, 19 pass blocking grade, 69.7,
Okay.
which is like not half bad. They only credited Yassine Willis with one pass blocking grade, which was a 70, and they gave him a 71.8. So he must have done pretty good on his singular pass block assignment.
Yeah. 'Cause
But as you mentioned, yeah,
I remember that might have been the two that knocked it down from a high grade or something. I don't know.
yeah,
But,
and yeah, let's start with those outside tackles because I think that's where a lot of people just watching from the stands, watching at home, the feedback that I was hearing on social media, and as I started paying a bit more attention to it, and as Steve saw the entire game because that's what he watches, Demetrius Weatherspoon and Savion Washington didn't have their best of games.
no.
Washington graded out at a 47.9 and Weatherspoon at a 31.7. So much so that Weatherspoon, as we aforementioned, was taken out for a series or two in favor of Enrique Cruz. And as I just mentioned, Enrique Cruz actually has the highest pass blocking grade on the team with an 82.5 on 12 pass blocking snaps. So, yes, like, one, cool, you have depth. Because, hey, when's the last time, Steve, you've seen depth rotation for Syracuse at offensive line?
Yeah. Yeah. About then.
Yeah,
I think it legitimately would have been back in the Marone years.
exactly, probably. But, that was all just to give, seemingly, it was just that change to Cruz was to seemingly give Weatherspoon a, mental reset or something. Or, a few series of coaching from
Right.
Dale Williams and or Jeff Nixon. If, Jeff Nixon does the Tommy Reese phone from the box to the sideline.
Yeah. No, and it's, I don't know. Watching what happened was, I don't know. It was interesting. They actually, Stanford must have seen something because they schemed up not only just attacking those corners with players and, traditionally with a pass rush, they were hard pinching those corners too. Like both ends were kind of pinch rushing those tackles and driving them back into McCord, collapsing a pocket that almost formed because that interior was holding up okay. Wasn't great, but it was holding up enough to, if one side or the other was able to hold their own, it would have been enough for him to get enough time to make a play. what I was worried about, not so much, the offensive line has plenty of worries from what we saw and what we're talking about, but also the inability for Nixon to switch up some sort of play calling to, hell, even have Gadsden on a 5-yard dig and just dump the ball to keep them from being able to continually bring pressure, continually force Syracuse to, I guess, play with way quicker than they wanted to as far as getting the ball out.
Well, I think it's also like, I mean, Andy pointed this out during our last podcast. Syracuse's favorite play is everyone's favorite play in Madden/CH college football, which is 4 verts. And there's a reason why you don't run that every single play, because once you realize that's a go-to, it's actually fairly easy to scheme against to take away the big hitters, 4 verts.
Yeah.
And
I mean, give me 3 verts and a drag. Give me, 2 guys going deep. Like, give me a drag or a seam, a post, and a drag with somebody running a dig on the backside or something. Like, give me some sort of variance that's going to allow us to get that ball out of McCord's hands quicker. Because when he was able to, he made throws. He also made a couple to the wrong team. I'm sure we'll touch on that at some point.
Yeah, I mean, Fran was fairly straightforward in his press conference saying that they got outcoached. Specifically, he put it on himself, but Fran has been pretty open with taking accountability and blame all on himself rather than like calling out specific coaching staff members. But we're going to get to the defensive side of the ball and what happened over there. But I do think that this was a very uncharacteristic, in the very short time that we saw that we've seen Nixon at the helm, very uncharacteristic amount of predictability from the offense. And then on plays where they do, and Steve, the reason I thought about this is that the reason that when they did look like they were trying to adjust with new wrinkles, the execution was just absolutely horrible. That Villari, that pick 6, which ended up being the difference in this game. I mean, there's a million differences in a 1-score game that ends on a kick. But like, if you want to say the difference was that McCord pick 6, that McCord pick 6 is clearly miscommunication on the offense, whether it's Villari not running the right route, whether it's McCord not reading what Villari is going to do, or it's McCord messing up the play and what the read is supposed to be there. But that was really, like, we saw a little bit. Villari started getting involved more and more as it became apparent Oronde was going to get doubled every time he was on the team. And so you saw Villari start taking over some of what Gadsden would normally be asked to do. But then that almost immediately dried up after that play, and you saw Kyle McCord kind of lean in on his outside receivers and Trebor Pena on the inside rather than looking to the tight ends at all. So it did feel like there was a understanding that they needed to be more flexible, and then the minute they tried to be more flexible, it all went to hell, and they decided, you know what, now we're going to kind of stick with what works and just keep trying to smash this peg in this hole. And to be honest, like, second half offense was significantly better than the first half offense. Rushing attack was still very bad, and that's another thing we got to dive into here. But holistically, I appreciated Fran saying it, because my biggest takeaway here, execution wasn't 100%, coaching was not 100%, and that's what swings a close game against S&P Plus had Stanford as a team ranked in the high 50s, and Syracuse is a team ranked in the low 50s. Like, it's a pretty even matchup.
And that's when you start to see, again, was the two of the things that Andy mentioned there, play calling and the lack of the rushing efficiency. That's where both of those things, and also just the game situation, that's what also turns the offense a bit more one-dimensional and a bit easier to predict. Since, okay, if you're behind in the game at all times, and as the game starts to wind down in time, there starts to be a desperation in terms of, okay, how do I generate some offense quickly? Let's go to the well and try and do the plays that we know worked in our previous 2 games, which then eventually just got shut down because either McCord wasn't in the pocket long enough, or I should say wasn't safe in the pocket long enough because of the tackles collapsing, or the favorite targets were covered due to good scouting and play recognition from the Stanford defense. And then alongside that, you actually saw um, not just A gap rushes, which is in Syracuse teams pass. That's the main reason why um, there would be a lack of a rushing attack from Syracuse and a lack of rushing efficiency. There were actually plenty of a B gap rushes, inside zones, outside counters, and bounce outs, but just for some reason, whatever it was, that LeQuinn Allen and Yassine Millich just couldn't find any holes to fight through in order to get anything going on offense. And when you force any offense to become more one-dimensional, it just becomes infinitely easier to predict and play against.
I'll push back a little bit on, well, I won't push back on your assessment. I will push back on the fact that the passing attack, while there were mistakes made, was still very good at moving the ball down the field efficiently. In a way that is slightly terrifying to think of this team being able to be so one-dimensional and still be efficient when you're looking at a team like Colorado, who has the elite of the elite playmakers and is purposely being one-dimensional and is struggling to the extent that they are, which does make you realize, like, look, I think that's what makes this loss more frustrating, is because you understand that this team can be so much better. What I will say,
there's also the added wrinkle of you didn't have Zede Haynes, who wasn't there due to personal family matters, not disciplinary related. You didn't have Will Nixon either, who was dealing with a nagging injury and subsequently was held out of the game. So, and you also didn't have Emmanuel Ross, who could have been also another added spark plug as well. That we had Daryl Gilcoe for, which was pretty cool. But at the same time, there were some actually key pieces missing on offense.
Yeah, but we saw there, Gill had some nice catches. Umari Hatcher really stepped up. Jackson Meeks again came up when it mattered most, and I like the fact that what Fran was given that softball question about all the injuries, specifically with the running back group, and his response was, "Well, we had another running back," and I love that mentality, and I love the fact that he's doing some Mike Tomlin-esque, like, look, if one guy's down, that's not going to change everything, at least in terms of expectations. We'll get to why on the defensive side of the ball, I think that's a little bit different. But on the offensive side of the ball, the running game, I think, was more, and it's Steve, this is your neck of the woods. A few years ago, we saw this same thing happen where it became very easy to just stunt on the no pun intended, just stunt on the Syracuse offensive line, and you would be in the backfield and you'd be closing gaps with almost an astonishing amount of ease. There were multiple times that Stanford did that. It wasn't every single play like some of those late stage Dino Babers offensive lines,
right?
But it did seem fairly obvious that Stanford was able to get pressure with their offensive or with their defensive line very easily with stunts, and that led to issues where Allen especially either wasn't able to find a hole and just kind of to fight his way forward for yards, or he was basically shuttled into a gap that the defense wanted and was swallowed up by the linebackers, who basically said there's only one hole that he can run through, and we're dictating where that hole is as opposed to where the offensive line is dictating where the hole is.
Yeah, and that's inherently what every defense is looking towards doing. But Stanford definitely pulled it off, and that I'm curious what we'll see going into next week to tweak the run game, because there was no option no matter what they were running. It wasn't like something was working. Literally nothing was working. One thing I don't think we really saw was any true outside run. Whether or not that was a function of, I don't know, what some reason or another, but there was nothing really off tackle that I saw. And it kind of confused me when between the tackles wasn't working, and when Stanford's secondary is notoriously not their specialty. If we could find a way to get to the secondary, and we did have success when the ball got past that first level. Like, McCord threw for a bunch of yards. Wasn't enough to do what we needed to do, but outside of that front six, Syracuse was having success, which is weird to say in a game where they had 26 rushing yards and lost by 3 on a last second field goal. But whether they start play calling or changing anything to attack outside at all will be something I kind of want to see next week. Holy Cross notwithstanding, we're going to see a very vanilla playbook, I'm sure, but we need to practice some things at full game speed, and that's a great game to do it in.
Before slot machines.
Yes. Before we go to the offensive shootout of all offensive shootouts.
Yeah.
Las Vegas in an air-controlled environment.
Very excited. Just to kind of
baseball in 2027. Lol.
To give you, Steve, to kind of just validate you really here. LeQuint Allen had 13. The team had 13 rushes. Oh, geez, this is not great. Yeah, they got nothing up the middle, but the 3 times that they ran it to the left edge, PFF has them down for 5 yards a carry. Again, they.
Yay.
Right. Like there might have been reasons for that. The right side was not nearly as successful there, but the left side, there was something going there on those 3 play calls. I thought it was interesting that they didn't incorporate any of the jet sweep game. I thought that they would be trying to do more things to move or pause Stanford from being so aggressive with the stunting.
We saw the jet sweep motion twice. Both times ended up just being a shift in formation. But something like that, anything to keep that front 6 from going, straight ears back pinned and heading at McCord would have worked to mix this up. And we're saying things that this coaching staff figured out that minute, but I guess maybe some of them didn't, depending on what got called. Yeah. But either way, as soon as they look at film, they're picking this stuff up and they're going to change based on it.
And this goes back to one of my previous points as well, is that when this is the first time that this Syracuse coaching staff in general had found itself behind in a game at any point. Every single time this season, Syracuse has been in front and has been controlling the game. Even against Ohio, where it was a little bit hit or miss against the Bobcats, it felt like Syracuse was in control in the first half of that game still, despite what the score indicated at times. And of course, they were in control from the get-go against Georgia Tech. So now that Syracuse not only found itself behind, but definitively not in control of the game for the better part of the entirety of that game against Stanford, I think there might have been, too much cooking in the kitchen for the Syracuse coaching staff in terms of, okay, we need to do something and just, do what we're very, very comfortable with, instead of what probably should have been the game plan, which was, okay, let's trust what has gotten us to the plaudits that so many people are so excited about over the first couple of weeks, and, stick to, calling the plays that are, that are a bit more creative, instead of, all right, let's just stay comfortable and do these same plays that we know should get yards, when in reality they didn't.
Right. Are we talking a staff going a little 5D chess and overthinking themselves, and they'll settle into it type thing? Eventually, hopefully.
Yeah. It reminds me of this is a really, really niche reference, because There sometimes on my recommended pages there will be there will be the one JJ Watt mic'd up clip, YouTube video of one of his games versus I think like the Titans, and the radio announcer that's a radio announcer clip that's there is, when you're ahead in games, that's where the opportunity to rush the passer opens up, and
100%.
that's exactly what Stanford found itself in, because Syracuse got desperate, and it felt I think it felt like also for a lot of that, it felt like Syracuse was searching for a big play to wake up the dumb crowd a bit as well.
Yeah, and there were a couple of defensive stops that had that place rocking. Like,
Yeah, but there weren't too many of those explosive offensive plays that
right,
could provide that same spark.
to get people
Like,
engaged. Yeah.
yes, because you could only have the interceptions and the stops, carry the momentum on the offensive side of the ball so much.
I can say, for the record, I had my decibel meter on my watch out during that last drive. We did officially hit 111 decibels.
Mm. Did you
So,
remember your prediction, Andy?
I did not remember ear protection. I was with several people who it was their first time at the Carrier Dome, JMA Dome, whatever it's called, Dome. And we warned them, it gets really loud in here. And they're, well, we've been to Jets games. Oh, we've been to Ranger games. And I was like, I don't think you understand. And then I was shocked with how loud it got in there.
like,
And I came back and the first thing,
they don't call any of those stadiums the Loud House. Like, there's a reason we have that nickname.
yeah, it was I mean, but also like this was my first time inside of the hard roof dome instead of the soft roof dome, and that was definitively the loudest that I've ever heard it. And again, that has not been the biggest game that's been there. It's not been the biggest moment, but again, we'll get to the defensive side of the stuff, but that when they had the ball, first off, that touchdown popped. But for me, I think the loudest moment when Syracuse was quote unquote on offense was the ensuing kickoff, because that was the kickoff when, Stanford basically waved it off as a fair catch. And then the guys sprinted into the end zone, Alabama style, and were hyping up the crowd before Stanford and the defense came out onto the field. And that was
nuts.
Yeah, that I think was the loudest of the entire game was that. And I do think that is something where there's there were a lot of upset Syracuse fans coming out of that game. But my takeaway, if you're looking for small wins here, the momentum that has been built inside of that stadium during a game, things are moving in the right direction, and you don't want to see that lost because of one game. We were never going to the playoff. We were never going undefeated. We were always going to lose a dumb game sometime this year. There's probably at least one more dumb loss somewhere in this schedule. And we all probably have different feelings as to which game will be that dumb loss, to be completely
Who's ready
frank.
for the UConn loss before Miami? Let's go.
It better not be, because that's the other game I'm going to this year in the Dome. So mentally...
all of them.
So
I am as well.
So yeah,
I'll be
I think,
in a different position, but I'll be at said dome.
Weirdly, all the times that Christian and I have been in the dome together, I think we've only actually seen each other once.
Yeah, it was when I was in the press box with you.
Yeah.
Very funny. Also, we're gonna just take a quick detour here. Shout out to Dan Lyons, who is back at the Dome covering the game for Athlon Sports. Dan and Christian got to meet up before the game at my friend's tailgate.
There's perks on the seating chart. Dan was next to me in the press box, so we got to have lovely chats about the game and our feelings about said game.
Shades of noons gone by.
Yeah, a lot of fun. A lot of fun sitting next to Dan and reporting on the game with him.
Well, he said that he'll come back on here, and we'll get the reunion. We'll get the reunion tour going. So,
all right, when are we dragging Casillo out of the retirement home? Is it for him to comment on the woke cow Twitter?
I mean we need
local California expert to to comment on woke
I was
Cal
gonna
Twitter.
say, we're talking about going to games. I'm sure John will make the trek out to Berkeley to go see that game. So
Oh yeah.
just wait. But I do think that, kind of returning to the football before we wrap up the offensive side of the ball here, offensive line aside, injuries aside, I think one of the things that we'd be remiss not to talk about here is how much Kyle McCord has essentially flipped the narrative on himself in a loss. There was a very good opportunity that this game was going to be, oh man, Kyle McCord stinks, or oh hey, there's the same old Kyle McCord. And the narrative coming out of this game is like, after that ridiculous scramble that he had for a touchdown, everybody's loving Kyle McCord. And I am actually, and I don't mean this to be snarky and say like, oh, we should be focusing him. I thought he played a great game, all things considered. I thought that Syracuse was in that game because of him. I thought, again, the pick six was on somebody. Don't know who it was on, but it might have been on Kyle, might not have been on Kyle. But I am here. Yeah. Marvin Harrison Jr. roasting Kyle McCord and the entire internet loving it, and also seeing that Kyle McCord is a different human. I think that he is the biggest winner of the first quarter of the season by far.
That is the ultimate damning by faint praise right there.
For those who don't know, Marvin Harrison, immediately after the McCord scramble touchdown, added him on Twitter and said that was the most athletic thing I've ever seen you do. Fire emoji, crying face emoji.
Which, to be fair, it really was ridiculous and awesome. And the dome exploded when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
One random thing that I was thinking about, because you said kickoff returns, was that fair catch, like from where Andy and I were, it looked like he fair caught it outside of the end zone and stepped in?
There is a college football rule that you can fair catch, like I think inside the 25. I'm pretty sure there is.
Huh. That seems like a dumb rule.
Yeah.
It's very weird this year because it's different. Again, this is a huge difference between the NFL and college.
Could you imagine college kickers trying to figure out the landing zone with the NFL rules?
Yeah, it's just not.
No.
I do appreciate that every coach has told every kicker, just boot it out of the end zone, man. Let's not even try here. Just boot this out of the end zone.
Yeah.
And Stanford was clearly trying to do that. They did it successfully. But yes, Steve, the rule in college is that you can fair catch it anywhere under the 25.
That's what it is. Yeah.
And
Exactly,
the ball will be taken at the 25-yard line.
So
You can need.
Anymore?
What was that?
So why do we kick off anymore?
Because if you return it in any way, it's not like the NFL. If you return it, you take it wherever you land the return. So, but I agree with you. I think we are seeing the actual implementation. Everyone's just booting it out of the end zone,
which is why the NFL changed the kickoff rules.
Yeah, whatever. It really confused a lot of us that were standing in the dome. Like, I don't remember that new rule, and it might have been a couple of years. I don't know, but
the only reason I know about it is because in EA college football, I try to spend all this time doing the perfect kickoff to like pin somebody in the corner, and then they just fair catch it, and it's like they get the ball to 25. I'm like, oh well, that's kind of a waste.
Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, that was
it's not a waste. I was gonna say, it's not a waste, and it's our friends at Home Field Apparel, maker of fine bomber jackets, t-shirts, hats, hoodies, fleece, plain t-shirts, you name it, they have it. Home Field Apparel, your one-stop shop for everything Syracuse. They just had and all other vintage college apparel. They just dropped their newest Syracuse item. It is a vintage Syracuse corduroy rope snapback. It is a topic of discussion in the News Magician Slack.
Was it ever? Holy moly!
Connor, I just want you to know that you have really awoken something as people were going back and forth as a hat connoisseur. This, if you're watching us on Twitch or Facebook or Twitter or on YouTube, you'll see the hat right here, created by Home Field Apparel, part of their new original hat line. These hats are very in style. This is the new hot retro thing. I've seen them for NFL logos. 47 brand has a great bunch of them, but they're not for everybody. And as one member of this particular podcast mentioned, they are for a very specific type of not the youth, trendy hipster kind of person. There is another type of person that wears these hats.
You had the hip part, but like, yeah, I mean, I have two various corduroy hats myself, both of the dare I say dirty hippie variety. So I saw this, I'm like, oh, this is amazing, and then everybody's like, well, that, you know, everybody here is too young or too old to wear that. I'm like, but I like corduroy hats. I was very confused.
I'm not gonna lie, this is gonna be my foray into testing corduroy hats. I've not done it before. We're gonna see how it works. I am in Brooklyn. This is kind of the, you know, you can pretty much wear anything you want around here, and no one will bat an eye. So we'll see how it goes. But if you would like this corduroy hat, if you would like any of these wonderful items that they have on homefieldapparel.com, make sure you use promo code NOONS24 NUNES24 for 15% off your first order at Home Field Apparel. Again, that's NOONS24 NUNES24 for 15% off your first order at Home Field Apparel. Thank you, Connor and the crew, for continually supporting the Disloyal Idiots podcast on Fans First Sports Network.
I got excited thinking that Bomber Jacket was back in stock, but it isn't.
Just letting you know, Steve, my friend, because he was wonderful and let me borrow his car. I was up in Syracuse for a bachelor party this weekend, picked up a catering order of Dinosaur Barbecue. It was cold at the house that we were staying at in the morning. So I brought my bomber jacket with me, and then we get to campus, we get to the city. It's 80 degrees. Don't really need a bomber jacket going. I left the bomber jacket in the back of his car, and I forgot it in Syracuse. So my bomber jacket, along with my Syracuse koozie, is sitting in Syracuse, New York, in the back of my friend's truck.
All the more reason for you to come visit us again.
Yeah, there you go. I would threaten to go steal it from you, but there's not a chance in hell it's fitting me. So
I'm not gonna lie. I did. It is a little tight on me, so I might have gone with a smaller size than normal on that one.
Yeah.
As a goal.
You may want to size up on the bomber jacket. It is a slightly tight fit. Yeah.
You know what else?
When it eventually gets back in stock.
You know what else doesn't quite fit right? Syracuse's exterior run defense.
Yeah, this is becoming a bit of a problem, and you can't put it all on Marlowe wax.
No, and there's a lot of.
Wait, it's starting to become a problem.
Yeah,
Okay, let's flip through the years. You can take the Syracuse. First of all, like I don't know how we've mentioned this yet because it's like so many other things happened. But you can also take the Syracuse coaching staff out of Syracuse, but you can't remove the Syracuse looking absolutely dreadful after a bye week out of Syracuse.
Like I think Kevin might have said it in the chat, but like we came out of the bye week less healthy.
Yeah. Because
not what
Leon
you
Wilson
want.
was also out injured on the defensive side.
Who
And
was?
then Marcellus Barnes got folded in half and was out for the rest of the game after the first series.
Yeah, do we know any word on what that was?
That was back spasms.
Him just getting break. Okay, it just looked like he got broked.
Yeah,
don't
and
like
he got back spasms because of said
I was like,
holding.
I was right above looking at that, and I was, as soon as that happened, I'm like, that's not good.
No. At least it wasn't head, because that's what I thought it was.
Yeah, no, I knew there wasn't head contact, but no matter what, the way he went down, I was like, he's not getting up.
No.
There was a lot of the front six is really taking a beating right now. Front seven, front six is taking a beating right now.
Oh, the interesting thing we learned in Fran Brown's presser, which actually relates to this. One of the discussions we've had for a lot of this time, and this is probably due to the Marlowe injury, but one of the discussions we've had for quite some time here on this podcast has actually come true. For the time being, Justin Barrett is playing linebacker.
Yeah, that
We were calling for that for a while.
it needed to happen because I think, again, we're going to talk about the 4th and 9 play coming up here, but it became very telegraphed when Syracuse was bringing additional pressure based off of if they were in a 4-down set or in a 3-down set. The Fadil, if his hand was on the ground, they were trying to bring pressure. And it's obvious because they were trying to use Fadil to either open up a gap on the edge or attract attention and shift the line to get pressure from somewhere else. And it became like, if you go back and you watch, like I watched the condensed game, every time there's 4 guys with their hands on the ground, Syracuse is bringing a 5th or a 6th, sometimes a 7th for pressure, versus when they had 3 on the ground, it was almost always some sort of softer look. And I, again, talked about how Fran said that they got out-coached. That is a massive, massive coaching red flag to telegraph that, obviously.
On the opposite side, it's glad that it's not the offense that did that, because I remember that Athletic article from a couple years ago about the ACC coaches in Syracuse offensive play calling being very, very predictable and easy to game plan against.
Now, so I did that thing and pulled up the PFF grades because I choose to use the game strictly for the offense because that's where I focus my brain. Strangely, about 3/4 of the defense is above and a decent bit above the Mendoza line for overall defense. You know, all the way down to, of the 20 players that were ranked, the top 15 all were above the 60% Mendoza line.
But sort that now by tackling.
Well, that takes to the top 10. Clarence Lewis, weirdly enough, is the standout on the tackling end of things, and the standout on the coverage end of things. Cinco is above him in coverage, but
I mean, a lot of people are going to drag Lewis for the 4th down play. That's not his fault.
No, it's not. Just like the touchdown catch isn't anybody's fault. Like, that was a ridiculous snag.
I remember Dan and I like looking at each other and like, what just happened? That was insane when Iomeyer caught that ball. Like,
right.
Holy moly.
It was literal shades of
Odell
Beckham. It was like, what is happening?
Well, also, just want to call something out on that 4th down play. Steve, you said it. Cinco was the highest graded pass coverage on Syracuse's team.
Yep.
On that 4th down play, Cinco is on that side of the field or playing mid. He's shading towards the near sideline, and then they run a jet sweep to pull him out from the middle into the other side of the field. Like that again. Syracuse got out coached here by Stanford, who there's a couple of, I'll dive into that a little bit more later, but that was one of the things that credit to the Stanford coaching staff. They knew they were going to take a shot, and they specifically found a way to get the best Syracuse threat to their shot out of the play entirely.
Here's the other thing that we saw a lot, because you would assume that with Barnes, where, as we mentioned, Marcellus Barnes was injured on the first series, you would assume that Devin Grant would get most of those snaps. But on quarterback, it was actually Jaden Bellamy who went in. That's because Fran confirmed in the press conference that Grant is now Syracuse's nickelback.
Okay, that works. It definitely worked on the pick.
Yeah.
So okay. Yeah, the snap count, it seems like, they're running with that core of probably 12 guys consistently. Sparrow, who started, only got 27 snaps.
And I think that's a lot because Syracuse is probably going to run until Wax gets healthy with some combination of Wax, Barrett, and Diggs. McDonald, Barrett, and Diggs in linebacker.
Yeah, and I mean, whatever works to give them the best chance at pulling this around and staying good until that second bye week. But Lewis was in there for 75 snaps, Grant for 71, Diggs for 70, Bellamy for 69 because Barnes went down after 6. So, there Jobity actually showing up front with the 66 snaps at D tackle, like that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So, no matter what, I guess I don't know if there's as much depth as we thought. Like you're running 11, 12 guys consistently.
I will say, I'm not sure how much this affects the defense or not, but Dan and I talked a lot about this when Syracuse was on defense.
Yeah.
These guys need to rotate faster in and out of.
Especially those D tackles, because
Yes.
I think there was probably 4 different plays where I'm like, don't get 12 men on the field. Don't get 12
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, guys, please hurry up.
Come on, let's move.
With the amount of rotating Syracuse does on defensive line, you should know how to sub out a little quicker.
One would think, but alas, here we are.
Yeah, the defensive side of the ball was always my concern going into this year. I think Elijah Robinson is doing an okay job, all things considered, adjusting to what was the one injury that Syracuse couldn't have this year, which was Tamarlo Wax. Like, if there's one guy that we just knew was not going to be replaced in any way, shape, or form, that's the one on defense. And I feel what we've seen so far is a great attempt at making lemonade out of lemons. It's just not very good lemonade because, again, these are some really bad lemons. What I will give him not credit for, and what I do think was a little bit frustrating, the call on 4th and 9, I don't think was a lazy call. I don't think it was a bad call. What I broke this down a little bit on Threads. I'm trying out all the different Twitter alternatives, and Threads is where I'm settling in on for now. If you look at if PFF does the passing charts, there was only one throw of more than 10 air yards that was completed by Stanford, and it was that 4th and 9 play. Syracuse did a great job of preventing Stanford from going over the top. However, Stanford was nearly perfect on everything underneath. And so one of the things that I'm frustrated by on that call is that Syracuse on 4th and 9 with an opportunity to, close out this game, decided to have they go man on the 3 primary receivers and zone just sitting across that line, which is exactly what you want to do if you're taking a shot. And again, that throw was executed perfectly for the coverage that was there. The catch was really well done, but it was a situation where I just in the moment, it felt like now you're running the soft zone coverage across the line underneath. And then looking back on replay and looking at the data, it really was, they decided to adjust on the one play where Stanford knew it could take a shot.
Well, here's my thing about that. That is obviously a big point because it's the play that decided the game. This should have been a lot worse because that's the only deep ball that Daniels completed because his deep ball accuracy, and this is not too much on Syracuse, Daniels' deep ball accuracy was just not good. Kyle Manor was open so many times beyond 15 yards and just did not get hit. So this should have looked a lot worse because there were plenty of open receivers and Daniels just didn't hit him. He hit him at the right moment at the right time and when it counted the most, which is good for him, but didn't look great in the previous 3.5 quarters taking shots downfield because he had wide open guys.
Yeah. So I just wanted to share. This is Ashton Daniels. This is from PFF. This is his passing chart. Again, behind the line of scrimmage, did great. But when you're you kind of give the quarterback these two outer quadrants underneath 10 yards. That's when you knew Garrett Schrader was in trouble when he couldn't make those throws.
Shaston
But
Daniels did Garrett Schrader.
well, I was gonna say this middle is looking real familiar right here. Like that is not what you want to be seeing out of your quarterback.
Holy, Syracuse just got beat by Garrett Schrader.
Right, because then here's the one they go 0 for 4 down here.
But the Clarence Lewis interception was the most obvious interception in the world. It was so funny.
Right, and then you go to Kyle. And then you go to Kyle McCord and you look in like this is an NFL passing chart here where like they're targeting the middle. He's fairly accurate over the middle. This deep one right here is the problematic quadrant. But if you can own the between the numbers between 0 and 10 yards over the middle, you're gonna be in great shape. But again, to your point, Christian, I didn't think Daniels looked great. He the incompletion here on the outside left was another one-on-one that he just absolutely overthrew into the he was trying to go over the back shoulder and just airmailed it 10 yards into the stands. But I looked at this and it kind of confirmed what I thought, which was Daniels did not have a great game, but he was still beating Syracuse underneath, and it just felt like an odd play call to all of the sudden adjust when they hadn't really been adjusting all game.
So when you showed that the McCord chart there, that made me think of something I was brought to my brain in the dome was that, yeah, we're 9-12 on that underneath, and yet it felt like we didn't pound that at all. It felt like we weren't targeting it. We were just using it for checkdowns, and I felt like if you hit, Pena on a quick cross or used Gadsden more in that area, like I don't think we targeted Gadsden hardly at all compared to what we could have.
So here was the thing with Gadsden. I know we're supposed to move on to defense, but like this is interesting.
The defense we know where the problems lie.
Mm-hmm. Here was the thing with Gadsden. There was actually a good amount of the first half where Gadsden just wasn't on the field. Because I personally think, I didn't ask Fran about this, but I'm not sure if anyone did, that I think Gadsden was getting some sort of in-game discipline for the unnecessary roughness play on the punt that Syracuse was flagged for. By the way, penalties again in Syracuse, really, really funny.
Yeah.
And not obviously, but obviously not in a funny way, but like that's so Syracuse.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Exactly. I personally think Gadsden was getting some sort of in-game discipline for that.
What the hell were you doing?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so they're like, Dan and I noticed that, and we're like, yeah, like look, like we're seeing a lot of Valari and Man getting rotated in and out of the tight ends. Like, what's happening? Gadsden's healthy and everything, and like I think he was getting some sort of in-game discipline for not for being stupid on that play.
4 targets for 12 yards.
Exactly. And I think, again, a lot of that was also being doubled. But when Andy pulled up that McCord passing chart, where Gadsden does a lot of his damage as well, is where McCord went for 3 for 7 in the middle part. And
but we're seeing that he wasn't even he's got only 2 other targets in there. And
you want to target around Gadsden. That's fine.
Like use him. Pena got the bulk of it at 11 targets.
Yeah, and honestly, and this is the thing that frustrated me. I think Pena should have been targeted more.
Yeah. Oh, he
was
because he was hitting those seams like.
Pena wasn't thrown at until the second quarter. I'm like, what are you doing? And then once he got thrown at, like I tweet a lot during the games, but like there's a point in my Twitter where I'm passive aggressive there in my Twitter account where I'm like, oh look, Trevor Pena was targeted and made a catch. Maybe Syracuse should do that more often.
Yeah,
because he dropped because there was only one incompletion to Pena on the targets that he had.
Insane.
Like, throw the ball to him. He made stuff happen.
Though he did end his touchdown streak.
Yeah.
I think he can live with that, dude. He had 10 catches for over 100 yards.
Yep.
That's an NFL stat line.
Oh yeah. And Hatcher had a day.
Yeah, and also that was Pena playing at outside receiver because of Haynes' absence.
Oh yeah. Which, I mean, shows another wrinkle that we can use in that I guess that's the thing too, is when we get back to healthy, you're seeing different combinations of how we're using things, what we're using things for. Does that change a set where, mid game, say whenever we're at full strength again and Zeed's back and whatever, is he choked in and is Pena out wide? And are we running some different looks? Are we able to mix and match and play around a little bit more with him and Ross healthy? And I don't know. There's a lot of bad that showed its face during this game, but there's a lot of tools that can come to the toolbox because of what we were forced to do. With the personnel changes, you've also noticed some people that can step up, like Darrell Gill. I love that guy. I don't know why. First time I saw him in spring practice, I was like, he's going to be something. And he showed up this game. So, I don't know. I don't see as many negatives as it seems like a lot of the fan base sees. So
I think this is a great time to talk about that because holy crap.
Oh, God.
Too many people are calling for Fran's head. Like, guys, pump the brakes, please.
I'm going to have something going out on my Substack about this tomorrow. This is, to me, and I can't take credit for this idea. This is something that I was listening to Stephen Godfrey's subscriber episode on Split Zone Duo. They're talking about Florida State. And obviously things are really bad in Florida State. I'm not saying Syracuse is Florida State bad right now. But he said that he said that when he talks to coaches, when he talks to agents, the mentality that coaches have are that you find out who's a good coach versus who's a bad coach when a team goes from good to bad and has to rebuild either on the fly or in an off season, because that's coaching in order to get things back on the right track aggressively. And for Fran and Syracuse, I don't think that it's quite there yet. Where I do think this is that Fran spent the entire offseason gassing up the Syracuse fan base. The fan base spent the offseason buying into all of his hype. And Fran has continually said that he has expectations to build Syracuse back into a contending program. He has never said that is the goal for the 2024 Syracuse team to contend for the playoff or a conference championship. And if you can call me out on this if you want to, but go back and listen. He never says this year. He's always talking about Syracuse, the program, not Syracuse, the season. And I do think that this is a moment where the fans kind of got really excited. And the problem with Syracuse has always been this, that we will get behind this program. We will get behind our teams 110%, give it everything. But the moment that the air comes out of the balloon the first time, it's not just the air coming out. The balloon pops and the pieces are in a million places. And putting that all back together, nobody's really figured that out. And at least on the football side, and credit to Jim Boeheim, who's been able to do it multiple times on the basketball side. But on the football side, this is what doomed Doug Marrone. This is what started causing friction with Dino. This is what doomed Schaefer from the start of his career. Was that well, there was a lot of other things, but I'm going to focus on this one in particular. It's just this thing of how do you play the media? How do you play the fans? How do you build the program without succumbing to this sky is falling, we absolutely failed mentality that comes at the very first momentum stop? And it's not because Syracuse fans are out. Some of them are out here saying like, oh, the goal is the national title or bust. It's just that the moment that the first bad thing happens, it's back to the defeatist, same old Syracuse mindset. It's back to the like, this is the way it always goes with Syracuse mindset. And that is really hard to prevent from infecting a team and a culture. And that's Fran's biggest challenge here. And personally, for me, I'm like, I know this is going to get clipped and thrown up against me, but I'm kind of happy that we lost a game and we didn't go 6-0. We didn't go 7-0 because we got this out of the way now. We knew that the team was never going to go undefeated, never going to go 10-2 and be in the national championship game or in the conference championship game either. What I did think is that there's a chance here for Syracuse to go to a bowl for 3 straight seasons. You know the last time that happened? Because it wasn't in my lifetime. The top, yeah.
No, it was.
Yeah, it was.
Was it?
You were
Last
born
2 years of Marone, first year of Schaefer.
Yep.
That was oh my goodness, I forgot the Marone. No, because Marone went 5-7.
Oh, no, it was,
Yeah,
no, wasn't it 12-13? Wasn't it?
he did.
It wasn't 12-13 and no, it was just 12 and 13. No, okay, never mind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because that was the 5-7 year. It might have happened in the early 90s. But my point being here, because we looked this up before, 3 bowls is not something that Syracuse does often.
2001.
Yeah. So I was not
McNabb.
even 10 years old. So it did happen.
I lied. We did not go to a bowl in 2000.
Yes.
We were 6-5, but we did not go to a bowl. So technically, the last time we went to a bowl 3 years in a row was 1999.
There we go.
Yeah.
Cute Dennis Green quote.
Yeah, it's been a long time. And I think it was Michael who had the article about first-year head coaches, and they don't do well at Syracuse. I think Coach Mack was the best one when he went 7-5 or 8-4 in his first year at the helm. I think it was either Coach Mack or maybe it was Coach P. It was one of those 2 coaches had a good first year.
Let's just hope that Fran doesn't have a second-year Schaefer.
Right. This is my point. My point to all this is essentially to say, like,
First year.
what was that?
P was 10-2 in his first year.
Yeah. So there we go. And that's he inherited a great team there.
You know, the
Like
same.
that's
To bowl games 3 years in a row.
yes. Like
The guy that Fran's trying to rebuild the program to be just like.
exactly. It's been a long time. It's been a really long time. It was never going to happen in year 1. The goal should be to get back to the bowl game, get to the establish the fact that Syracuse plays in the postseason every year. And I just think, and again, I know you guys have opinions on this as well, but it's just I don't understand why I understand why people wanted to believe in the hype. I don't understand how people bought into the hype at the level that they did. But now that we can eliminate playoff contention here, I still think this team's pretty good. I still think this team can win 8 games, which would be an accomplishment.
100%.
And I think that should be celebrated.
Again, last podcast, I brought up the Dennis Green quote. It applies right now. They are who we thought they were.
So on the Discord, we've had some discussion about stuff like that, and you know, there's literally one irrational guy, and the rest of everybody seems to have their head on their shoulders. But one thing I brought up on there was we expected this team to be 3-1 at this point, or coming out of Holy Cross. Like that's what just about every rational brain said, right?
Yeah.
It's just we thought the loss was going to be Georgia Tech instead of Stanford. So why are we resetting all these crazy expectations now if we're doing the same thing that we thought we were?
You are crazy if you thought Syracuse was going undefeated.
Yes.
Like you could say that any year.
I know I didn't put my record in the preseason prediction poll, but I've been in the preseason I was flipping between 7-5 and 8-4.
Yeah,
I think I said 7-5.
We're on track for that, and that is a building block that Frank can use to continue to build the program. And like when you look at this loss again, it wasn't a bad loss. It's
they
not
should have
like
won. The numbers said they should have won.
This isn't like the October losses from last year where Syracuse just objectively looked dreadful. It's not like the November losses last year where Syracuse also objectively looked dreadful. Like Andy said, the number said Syracuse should have won this game. They didn't. However, that means there's a lot that you can learn from this game that Syracuse can use to improve.
Yeah. And for the record, those of us on the Noon's predictions, we all said 7-5, 8-4, and then Mike was, I don't know, drunk or something and said 9-3. So those are our options.
And when you look at those losses from last year, what could Syracuse improve on? Not much.
No, and I don't know. It's
How many times did we come on the podcast last year and just go, same old Syracuse.
right.
What are they going to do to fix it? Probably nothing.
And when this year have we said same old Syracuse? Like, we haven't.
30 minutes ago when we said Syracuse looked awful coming out of a bye.
Oh, yeah. But in general, you know what I mean? Like, even that, the whole discussion today has been how people are thinking the sky's falling. But in actuality, when you look slightly below the surface of what you saw, there's a lot of things to look forward to and a lot of things to, keep in mind for the rest of the year of things they can correct and things they can change.
Yeah, and I think that this is one of the things that's really frustrating about college football, but what makes this sport so great is that even the teams that win it all have games like this where they dramatically underperform to what they should or could do, and they either lose a game that they're not supposed to lose, or cough, cough, Georgia versus Kentucky, you go down and you escape with a 1-point win and you go, what the hell was that? And that becomes coaching fodder for the rest of the season. This happens even at the best. And so to pretend that even I think we've all been Saban brained where Nick Saban teams were the outlier. That is not the expectation in college sports. Even Kirby Smart, Saban 2.0, is not nearly as good at Saban at being dominant and efficient week in and week out. The nature of this sport is to have multiple games on your schedule that you are the better team, and then you either don't execute to the level or something weird happens and the numbers come out and say you should have won and the scoreboard says, nope, you didn't win. That's what happens in the sport to even the best teams. And to think that this Syracuse team was above that is just ridiculous. And the thing is that if you go about this the other way, Syracuse is probably going to win a game they don't deserve to win at some point in this season. The team is too talented to not hang around a game that they don't deserve to win. Fingers crossed it's Pitt, because the 4-0 Pitt is really getting on my nerves. But that is a topic for another time.
We've at least got him in week 6. By that point, Narduzzi may have a chance to Narduzzi, so...
The only problem is that Syracuse is coming off a bye.
Maybe we come back off this bye healthier instead of more injured.
Marlo Wax, you're our only hope.
That is the target date for Marlo Wax to come back.
Oh, now I need to make that meme.
Yeah, well, I hope we wear the old Stormtrooper whites for that too, and we just make Kyle McCord watch all the Star Wars during the bye week.
All right, Steve, your mission. Should you choose to accept it?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Just like this podcast.
It's Steve's mission to walk up to the John A. Lowey Athletics Complex, walk up to Kyle McCord and say, "Hello there."
Just pull back my hood.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
I'm enjoying this. But that's it for this week's edition of Disloyal Idiots, a Fans First Sports Network podcast. Thank you again to our sponsors, Home Field Apparel. Make sure you use promo code NUNES24, NUNES24, for 15% off your first order of Home Field Apparel. Thank you so much to everybody who has liked and subscribed on the podcast platform of choice. Make sure that if you're new here, you like and subscribe to help us trick the AI into expanding the Ottoman Empire. Thank you to all of us, our followers, all 480 of you who are joining us live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and or Twitter. We really appreciate the support. We do this on Sunday nights ish at 8 p.m. ish most weeks during the football season. Looking forward to being back here next week to break down the Holy Cross game. Thank you again to our support on our sister site, newsmagician.com. We know it means a lot for to still keep engaged with that community. You can still read really good work from the guys over on the site. It's always a good time over in News Magician land. So for Steve, for Christian, for myself, who is about to go recover very heavily after a great weekend of Central New York hospitality, which, by the way, for those of you that saw me or provided support to the bachelor party that was rolling through Central New York, thank you so much. It really was an amazing weekend, and I love upstate New York with all my heart. Go Orange.
Live Moss, Syracuse.